ES Audio.
So you've risen to the top, you've got a powerful role in a major company, and you know you have the skills to go it alone. Should you?
Having a big job like that, you can get a meeting with anyone, right? You had huge budgets, big teams, big brand name behind you. But then when you leave and you actually notice that no one wants to meet with you anymore, it's yourself.
Huib van Bockel was the marketing boss for Red Bull. Now he's CEO of his own energy drink company, Tenzing. Within 2 years of launching, it had a £2 million turnover, and it's grown ever since. On the face of it, that sounds like an overnight success, doesn't it? Here's how Huib's first pitch meeting went.
I asked him to come down, and he was on the stairs walking down, and he looked at me and he said, "I told you I wasn't interested," because he saw the cans, and he walked back up. And I actually cried.
I'm David Marsden from the Evening Standard. You're going to hear a lot about climbing mountains in this show. There's a mountain on the Tenzing cans. It's a fair analogy. And the story of the company itself actually begins on one. So let's start with the Tenzing story itself, because I think it's one of my favourite entrepreneurial tales. Where did it begin? It all started on a walk, I guess?
Yeah, exactly. So, before I went out for that walk, I knew already kind of what I wanted to do. There was a huge energy drinks market that was kind of saturated with, brands that are, with artificial ingredients, high sugar levels, that pump their marketing budgets into the F1s and lots of carbon fossil fuels consuming, marketing programs effectively. So I thought the basic premise was really simple. It's always been, I want to have a natural energizing drink that is made purely from plants, is low calorie and sustainable. That's what I was kind of looking for. But then you still, of course, need a recipe, you need a name, and it all kind of came together on that kind of one moment where I was like, I was in Asia traveling, and I found out what they drink a lot in the Himalayas, which is like Tibetan tea, or they call it like butter tea, and lemon teas. They drink like two teas a lot. And so one is a tea with salt, that's the butter tea, and butter, and a very strong tea, which they boil for hours. And the other is kind of a lemon tea. And I had a doctor already by that time that helped me with my recipe. And I said, "Wow, is this cultural, or is it actually beneficial?" And he goes, "No, it actually has a lot of impact because it's a triple hit of natural caffeine, vitamin C, and electrolytes." And that then became the basis of the recipe. On that kind of same day, inspired the name, because I then immediately, it just came to me like Tenzing, because my father was always a huge Tenzing Norgay fan. He'd always tell me, about when he climbed Mount Everest. For the first time together with Hillary, and it was a beautiful story of a man. I've read all the books. I speak with the family a lot, so I know a lot about him, and it's always one of the most inspiring stories of a man who came from very little and reached the top of the world. So I thought that was such a cool story as well. And then the cool thing as well, then I thought, okay, it was available, which is also quite unique if you launch a drink, because drinks are in the same category, an energized drink, same category as beers, juices, everything. So every name you could possibly think of that I had thought of before that moment was taken. And this one was available. And I asked the trademark lawyer, I said, "Do I need permission of the family?" And he goes, "Well, you don't, because it's a very common name in that area. So it's like someone would call a drink John." But I was like, no, I do want their permission. Of course, I went, I met the whole family, and, we work closely. We've been partners in the business ever since.
That must have been an incredible moment for you to meet his family. It just must have been amazing. What did you talk about?
Well, there's a picture of me, which is really cool. There's a picture of me where I'm talking to Jumling, having a butter tea. And I also think it's the best picture that someone's ever taken of me. But why? Because I was genuinely happy. I was like so happy, and such a beautiful moment to be there and having this traditional tea together with him, and talking about our partnership and about his father and about him. Jumling himself is a very accomplished climber and guide. It was a really, really cool moment. And that's, I think, the cool thing about also entrepreneurship, I would say, is that I didn't start this business to think that something like that would happen. And that was always kind of, when you're at a bigger business, it's all like, paths are set out, and it's a bit more clear what you're going to be doing over the next whatever months or years, even with a clear kind of career path. And I think when you start your own business, it's all very, unknown what's going to happen. And that's scary, but also very cool, like in this case.
And had you tried the original tea then, or the recipe, before you went to check it out? If you had tried it, what was it like?
Well, to be honest, the flavor and the ingredient, it was more like the basic inspiration of the vitamin C from the lemon tea, the caffeine from like the teas. So we have got Himalayan rock salts in there because that is also based because we think it's the most pure form of salts and it has a lot of other electrolytes that are very good for the body. Our drink tastes nothing like it, but it has the lemon juice and it has the green tea, but it also has, for instance, green coffee. So because we couldn't get enough green, caffeine from just the green tea. So it's a mix of green tea and green coffee. So then afterwards, we kind of looked at what's the best functional mix that we can get from plants. But the basic inspiration was from there. Yeah, I mean, that's what I always think, long before there was any artificial energy drinks around, there was people drinking natural stuff that was working just as well, if not better. So that's the cool thing also, why make something artificial that nature can, do better.
But there are energy drinks out there. You know this because you worked at Red Bull. You were the marketing boss there. Was it not intimidating for you? I know you would obviously understand the market, but to also understand that here is a giant competitor that I know so much about that I have to go up against. Is there an advantage or a disadvantage to that?
Look, I'd started one business before, and one of the biggest insight I had from that was it's good to know the market that you're operating in. So, and that was like a big learning from my first go. So I think in that sense, it's an advantage that you know it. So I think, I don't think that was a putting off for me. Because I think that would be put everyone off at the end of the day. So no, I think I was always hesitant, and I still am, to be overly negative about them. If you look at, let's say, what BrewDog does, it just like kicks beer at every turn. I've always found that more difficult, I guess. So that's the only disadvantage, I'd say. Because I was like, I work there, I know a lot of people there. They're great, they're nice people, So I had a great time there. So that's maybe held me back from being more harsh.
But your sell is different. Your USP is that it's a natural energy drink. How important is it to differentiating Tenzing from other brands on the market? How big a thing have you discovered that to be for the consumers?
Well, that's also such an interesting question. Look, it was really cool because when I started, basically we started this category that's now called natural energy. So it's become a whole category in its own right within the energy drinks. And there's been many followers since, from Danone to Unilever to Britvic. They've all launched a natural energy since then. Some are doing well, others have not made it. And so that's kind of cool, I think. And I didn't really expect that to happen, to be honest. I think you're always a bit naive when you start. So there's two things that I think are quite neat. One is because I knew, most people know that a lot of people worry about those two things: artificial ingredients, all the artificial sweeteners, all that kind of stuff that are also getting a much more negative press now again, and just the high sugar levels. So I knew people worried about that. There was a quite high percentage that worried about that. So I was naively thought, if you then just launch a drink that is low in sugar and has only plant-based, people will drink it. But that's not how it works. So you have to kind of, it's all habits that you're stuck into. It's like, social comparison, or you're not drinking something that no one else is drinking. There's all these deeper beliefs that we all have as people. That it just takes time to launch something like that. But then on the other hand, now we're more than 6 years in, it has become an own category in its own right. And we are the fastest growing. So we're now going to do roughly about 12 million turnover this year. We are the fastest growing. We're nearly doubling in retail, even after 6 years. So we're the fastest growing energy drink in the whole category. So outgrowing all those huge big dogs. So yeah, I think it's kind of naively thinking it's going to go quicker, but then at the end, if you just keep going, it did work out.
Would it not have been easy for you to just drop a little teaspoon of sugar in there, as Mary Poppins says, and just put it in there to help things sell a bit better? I mean, did it ever occur to you to think about trying a different version of it, or do your entire values effectively prohibit that sort of thing?
Definitely. Like, so for instance, now with all the costs going up and the global warming, has an impact on the likes, so last year was a huge bad year for the raspberry crops, for instance, because it was really cold and then really hot. And those are the times you think, God, if I only also had only artificial flavorings in there, right? So that's also what I find very shocking, to be honest. Like, go to the most energy drinks or any drink for that matter, and they call themselves whatever, a cherry bomb, but there's not a single trace of cherry to be found. We've always said we take our energy from nature and we put all our energy back into nature. And I think if one of the biggest problems at the moment, I believe, is that we're just disconnected from nature more and more. And if you don't even source your ingredients from there, like, there's no benefit for you to be had to save nature, because you're making it artificially anyway. So the fact that it does hurt us more and we do pay more for these ingredients kind of inspires us at the same time.
And that aspect of giving back to nature goes beyond just the ingredients of the drink, doesn't it? That's a whole ethos of the company. You're carbon negative, for example, in your manufacture.
Yeah, so what we've done, and that's obviously grown over the years, right? Because in the beginning, you're tiny and, we were sitting in a hotel lobby trying to sell a case of Tenzing. But it was always there in the foundation of the business. Because one of the first things I did was with Jumbling, for instance. Actually, when we just started, so Jumbling is the son of Tenzing Norgay, and we started. And actually, at that time, it got quite a lot of news in the UK that the route to Everest was littered. I called him. I was like, is there anything we can do? And I had these cool ideas of like going there with a little team and doing these cleanup missions. So it'd be cool, because we always had like this community feel with Tenzing. So we thought, we could definitely get a group of people to come. And he just basically went, nah, doesn't work. We need bins. We need to build bins, because they were just like oil barrels that would fall over. I saw it later. And I was thinking, I said my whole first marketing budget will go to building bins in Nepal. I mean, how's that going to help me? But we did it, and it's like a cool way of, I think, being genuine about our commitment. So that was the first marketing spend I ever did, and there was like little plaques on it that says Tenzing, funded this, and we've had an occasional Instagram post on it, but I don't think it drove any business. But then we've just kind of increased that over the years. So. We're now we're b-corp certified, for instance, but from a carbon footprint, that's where we take very, very seriously. So we have a 4-step approach we defined. First of all is knowing our footprint. So we know our whole footprint from crop to can. So every piece of footprint we know. We work with Carbon Cloud for that. So we know it, we show it, then we lower it as far as we possibly can. We have lowering processes where we actually lower our footprint every year. We've successfully done that till now. And then lastly, everything we cannot lower, we locally offset. So we look at, let's say, we take our green tea from Kenya. We try and source most of our ingredients from close to home, but some ingredients, obviously like tea and coffee, cannot be produced in the UK. So then we take our tea from rainforest line certified farms, but then we have projects there to offset more than we emit in the country where we emit it. So we're officially carbon negative, taking more carbon out of the air than we emit. But I think the other 3 steps are just as important. I think the interesting bit about the first bit, I think 95% of companies already fall short of knowing their own carbon footprint. And I think that is just a disgrace. If you think what's happening now, and at the end of the day, it's companies that emit the carbon, right? You could argue, yes, it's people choosing those companies, it's people driving the cars, and they also have to make choices. But at the end of the day, all to the companies. And if they don't even know their footprint, how could someone even choose to do the right thing? And that's why we think carbon labeling is so important, because then you give everyone the choice to choose lower products with lower impacts.
Are you saying that people are looking for carbon neutral products? I mean, do consumers actually care about that environmental aspect?
That's the most important question there is. And if I'm totally honest, and it's actually known as the behavioral gap. If you ask someone, do they care? The younger they are, the more they do. Do they change their behavior as a result? Too little. At the same time, and that's why I think it's always so nice about the carbon labeling. So people ask me, okay, so this is, 0.45 carbon equivalents. Does anyone understand that? And I go, nobody. But that's the thing about carbon labeling. I'm putting it on, it's very vulnerable. I'm putting it on. I'm saying exactly how much carbon footprint it is. What's my automatic reaction? Try and get as low as possible. So that there's an element of putting pressure on yourself, and there's an element in the future. If we all start doing it, it will be known. And, you know, for instance, I was eating in Oaxaca the other day, and they have it on their menu, it's carbon labeled. So then you do start to choose, and you go, okay, I think these are just as nice. Then I'll have the lower carbon point.
So should that be down to the company's own decisions, or should there be legislation? Is it the sort of thing that needs to be forced through?
At the end of the day, I've gone through multiple phases in my life where I thought it's all down to us, you know, the people, which I still think it is. At the end of the day, there's three big entities of the world, right? If you think about it simply, it's the people, it's the governments, and it's the companies. So, and the companies and governments have most impact, but they will only do what people think is important. You know, so they do research, like companies do research. What do they think is important? And if people say, well, I don't find carbon labeling very important, then they'll just simply not do it. All of us have to like demand that. So for instance, I always think if more and more people drink Tenzing, and we keep growing as fast as we're growing, because you just see a group of people that find this extremely important, and they do choose based on that. So what will happen then eventually, first of all, we'll get bigger, which is good because we offset all our carbon and we take full responsibility for our carbon footprint. We show it everything. But also bigger companies will see that and go, hey, hold on, why are those guys growing? Well, then someone will tell them, well, they're, you know, really care about the environment. Ah, shit, maybe we should do that too. You know, that's how it goes. And I think, you know, and that's a good thing. You know, so that's how change happens.
Right, grab your energy drink of choice and let's power on through these adverts. And while you're doing that, hit subscribe and never miss an episode of How to Be a CEO. All those industry leaders, all that great advice from those who have been down this path before you. It's a bit like bashing a booster button for your business. What's next for Tenzing then? How do you keep innovating? You've already come in and disrupted, so how do you stay ahead, especially in the food and drinks industry? I guess, I mean, there must be only so much you can do, surely.
Well, I'm a big believer in like community. So we have these really cool communities that we do a lot with. We started everything with obviously the climbing community, but then we now moved into running. And I think we do a lot for them. So we organize running events. You know, we have our own run club. So I think, you know, if you're genuine about your passion about these communities, I don't think very fast they'll just then go away and, you know, go buy something else. And I think we do have the advantage of being the first mover. You know, people will always somehow respect that, where you go like, we started this natural energy category, you know, all these others, you know, have followed suit. So I think people do respect that and kind of buy into that principle. And so for us, it's really kind of in what we see now. So we launched in the UK, and it's really about focus. You know, I think so. We just UK for a long time. Now we're launching in the Netherlands. So really trying to, you know, go big here, which is starting really well. And then next year we'll actually move to some other countries in the Alps, because that's where we believe, you know, we obviously would fit really well. You know, so and therefore it will slowly spread. So every new country that you add becomes just a tiny bit more easy. It's still very difficult because you're kind of starting again, but still you've got a better story. You know, people would have heard of it maybe from a visit to London, or like, you know, a trip to Amsterdam, and then if they go to the Alps and bring it back. So I think, you know, slowly but surely it will become easier in every country you launch. It's still, yeah. I think it's one of the biggest, that's one of the things I always want to emphasize on, like, you know, platforms like this, is that it just takes a lot of time. So we're actually in the same growth curve as Brewdog. If I take out the COVID year,
I think we all wish we could take out the COVID year.
We grew 5% still that year, which is quite astonishing if we think we lost half our channels. We still grew 5%. But like, if I take that year out, because all the others we like nearly doubled every year or tripled. If we take out that year, we're on the same growth curve as Fever Tree and Brewdog. And it shows, if you look at their growth trajectory, they've got roughly the same growth trajectory, which kind of shows if you're launching a drink or a food and you kind of keep chipping away, you keep working hard and doing the right things, there is kind of a natural growth curve, it seems. But it always takes a lot longer than you think. So I think that's the main advice if anyone's starting. If I always hear someone, I want to exit in 2 years, I'm like, oh, you're never going to make it. But if people realize that it's going to be a long, long journey, and I think enjoying that journey, that's the most important thing as well. So we've got a cool team of like 15 people, and we're all in this together. And it's just we've all got the same passions, the same drive, and that's what really kind of gets a company going at the end of the day.
Yeah, just thinking about your branding, that imaging, just looking at your cans, you've got a mountain on the can there. It made me think, you can't run up a mountain, can you? You have to climb it, and it's going to take a really long time. Do you ever look at your own can and think, yep, I'm climbing that?
Yeah, no, true. Yeah, it's a really good analogy. Actually, you can't run up a mountain. I've never used it that way, but it's true. It's a really great one. And I think we all realize it. And I think, you're also... Why also we took about 4 years to launch in our second country. A lot of food and drink companies, or any company, scales internationally. I remember my dad read this article of another drinks company. He said, but they're already in 40 countries. Dad. Why are you not there? And I think a lot of what you see a lot now, you see that with the QComs, and you see with all these different, that scale really fast, get a lot of funding. They're basically scaling a business model that hasn't been proven yet. And I think for us, we really wanted to show, we wanted to know that it works in the UK. And then we go, okay, it's working here now. We're growing really fast. Let's try another country. And then you learn a lot from that again. And then once we launch one other country, I think the next year we're ready to launch in 2 more. So we're really also taking it kind of slow.
So you obviously created the company. You're the boss of this company. You have a strong staff philosophy, don't you, about management? I guess people taking responsibility for themselves.
One of the reasons I also wanted to start for myself, there's 2 reasons. One, I really felt like this need to make a positive impact. There's 3 reasons, actually, like a positive impact. Secondly, kind of to show myself what I was made of. If you're in a big company, all those companies I worked for would have been big if I wasn't there as well, And that comes to my third point. I was very anti-hierarchical. I didn't like people telling me what to do. And therefore, because I had all these other ideas that I thought were better. So I wanted to kind of check nearly if that was indeed true. But also I realized I just don't like the hierarchy structure. It's basically based on distrust, right? I'm your boss. I'm checking what you should do. Tell me what you've done it, blah, blah, blah. And I always hated that element to it. So if I start my own business, I'll be the only one who benefits, because then I'll be the only one who doesn't have a boss. So I thought, as I read a lot into this and look at and a lot of into self-managing companies, and we are a self-managing company. You don't get a boss when you come in. You choose your own boss, which is one of the coolest things we do. Actually, we call it a coach. So you get assigned someone for the first 3 months, and after 3 months, you choose your own coach, who then takes kind of all the boss type roles that a normal boss would have. It's still always, we're still early days. It's still, it's not only positives. There's some of those things. So it's a constant learning process. But we really hire people that are self-sufficient, like to get stuff done, are entrepreneurs in their own right. And I think I always say there's 2 things that you should have. You should be able to learn through doing and making mistakes. Those are the biggest learning curve. And secondly, kind of build a network inside and out to keep learning. Right, we have other learning projects as well, but I think those are the 2 key things that every entrepreneur has. You have to, you learn by doing and making mistakes, and you try and use your network as much as you can. And I think I really want to foster that in everyone. So you come in, you don't get told exactly what to do. So I think we attract those kind of people as well that like that independence and like to be entrepreneurial.
Is it better to be the boss, the CEO of your own company, or the boss of a bigger company? I probably know the answer here, but I'd quite like to hear it from you.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, like I said, I definitely enjoyed, working at bigger companies. I've always worked for big companies, funny enough, until that point. And fun, I don't think would be the good word, because when you leave, it was tough. It was just, I knew it was going to be tough, but it was tougher. And I was always quite open and honest about my, having a big job like that. You get a meeting with anyone, right? You had huge budgets, big teams, big brand name behind you. So you get a meeting with everyone. So I always knew that they weren't meeting me for me, always, obviously for the budgets I had or for the brand, whatever I could offer. But then when you leave and you actually notice that no one wants to meet with you anymore. So, and I'm not saying, of course, I didn't lose any friends or anything, but just in a business context, it's just tough. And I remember the first place I wanted to be in was Selfridges, because I spoke to a lot of like food and drink startups, and they said, like, go to Selfridges first, because that's the kind of trickle down system. You know, go to Selfridges first. If it goes well there, you go to Whole Foods, and then you go to Waitrose, and, you know, then you go to Sainsbury's. And I remember the guy who was doing it at the time, he left after, but he was like, you know, he said he wasn't interested. And then I heard someone, you go to the office, and their offices are just above the Selfridges itself. So if you go there, they have this policy that they have to come down. And this I just started, so it was like January 2016. It was ice cold. I was there. It was raining. I was there with my 2 cans. I didn't even have like a cool box or anything. I just had my 2 cans. And then I asked him to come down, and he was on the stairs walking down, and he looked at me and he said, I told you I wasn't interested, because he saw the cans, and he walked back up. And I actually cried. I was like, what have I done? You know, so it's like, what have I given up all that? It's never going to work. I think there's this constant doubt. I still have that, to be honest. There's a constant doubt, like, will it work? And that you don't have that at a big company. You know, the most stress you have is like political stress. So having your own business is a roller coaster. And then at one point I realized that you can only feel those extreme highs because you've felt the extreme lows. That's why it feels so good. First of all, I thought they were unrelated. It's like I was hoping for the high, but no, you only feel that way because you're coming. It's the same when you walk a mountain. If you'd be airdropped on top of Mount Everest, you'll probably go, wow, this is beautiful, but you're not going to get the same sensation. You know, you're just going to, of climbing up, of, you know, going through horrible, like being sick, not even knowing where you're going. That's what startup life's about. It's like you have no idea what you're doing. But then when you get a goal, when you get a small goal, it just feels extremely exciting. And I think at the end of the day, you know, that is what life should be about, right? So I wouldn't say it's more fun, but it's definitely way more fulfilling.
That was Huib van Bockel from Tenzing. Get the best interviews, news and analysis every day with the Evening Standard newspaper, and every minute if you go to standard.co.uk/business. How to Be a CEO is back on Monday morning. I'll see you then.